Relational Quadrant. Now, this is something that I got from Dr. Wayne Schmidt. I think before he was a doctor, he's currently the general superintendent of the North American Conference of the Wesleyan Church, so kind of like the grand poobah of the Wesleyan denomination. But this was like 30 years ago. He came to Indiana Wesleyan University and spoke at a class that I happened to be in, and he shared this little tidbit of information that I found to be memorable and over the course of 3 decades useful and accurate, and so those are incredibly important things. So relational quadrant basically breaks down into 4 quadrants, which is what a quadrant is, but it's based upon older and longer. And what does that mean? Very simply, that when you go to lead an organization, at least as far as a church organization, a volunteer organization primarily, but it also applies to those in positions of authority and leadership that are paid, how those people feel about you, whether or not they respect you, whether or not they actually follow you. Now in a paid situation where there's a paycheck on the line, or when it's a military hierarchy, when they can just order, those do change this a little bit. They make this slightly less important. But in a volunteer organization, like in a church where you're a pastor and you're in the position to lead a bunch of volunteers, this is incredibly important. And so what this means very simply is that if you divide it up by those people who are older than you are physically and younger than you physically, and those who have been there longer in that organization, that location than you have, and those who have been there a shorter amount of time than you've been there. Now, with those two different continuums, you have 4 quadrants. Now, the people that are older than you and have been there longer than you are not going to follow you, at least not a high percentage of them, and at least not for the first 6 years or so. The smaller the church, the smaller the community, the longer the time it'll take before they actually follow you. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be resentful or that they're going to mutiny or anything like that, but what I mean is that they will go along as long as they agree with you. And you can utilize their influence in the organization because they have earned the influence. They've been there for years. They've been doing the work. They're people that others follow. And so you can utilize their influence, but they're going to go along with you when they agree with you. They're not going to actually follow you. They're not going to submit to you. Obviously, in all of these, there's going to be a percentage of exceptionality, an exception to these rules. But by and large, you'll have the lowest buy-in from the people that are older than you and have been there longer than you. And then you have, at the very other end of the spectrum, you have those who are younger than you and who have been there less time than you. This is the quadrant that will follow you at the highest percentage, for a couple of reasons. They're self-evident in many ways. They look up to you because you're older than they are. You've lived life that they haven't lived. You have experiences they don't have, and they're looking to you to figure out how they're supposed to do life. The exact opposite of those who have had more experience than you, that have lived longer than you, that have gone through things you haven't even contemplated yet. And then they also have chosen that church, because it's a volunteer organization, they've chosen the organization with you as its leader. And that's a huge issue because they chose you in many ways. And so they're going to follow you at the highest percentage of any of these 4 quadrants. So those are the two opposites on the continuum, right? Older than you, longer than you, younger than you, shorter than you. And the other two kind of obviously fit in the middle. Now, the interesting thing here is, and it makes sense what you think about it, it caught me off guard, is that the next least likely to follow you group are those that are younger than you, but have been in that organization longer than you. And here's the simple reason. They're already following somebody. They're following the people that are older than them and have been there longer than them. Those people already earned their respect. And so these are the people that they're following. And so if you can utilize their influence, then these people will follow, but they're not following you. They've been there longer than you. They're looking to those other respected lay leaders that they have, well, they've learned to trust over time. You haven't earned that yet. instead of 6 years, I would say about 4 years in, you will have earned their following of you specifically if you've done a good job, if you've used the influence of the older generation that have been there longer than you successfully. And then the last one is obviously they're older than you, but they've been there less time than you. And they're actually going to follow you at a high percentage, just not the highest, because they chose to follow you when they joined the organization. Now, the interesting thing about that quadrant, I would say, is that over time, your influence diminishes a little bit as they build relationships with those other people their age who have been there longer than you. So, in many ways, those who hold the influence in that congregation are those that are older than the pastor, that have been there longer than the pastor, until you've been there as the key leader long enough to have earned the respect and the right to lead. And I think this is one of those things that young pastors especially need to know. Just because you've got the position doesn't mean you have the influence. You haven't earned it yet. Do your job well and expect, especially if it's your first church, you're as young as possible to be a pastor, you have the least amount of experience possible, you're likely going to be in a smaller church, in a smaller community where relationships matter most, and so expect it to take at least 6 years, maybe 8 years there before you're actually the one that is being followed. Now, of course, over time, if you're being successful, you're bringing in people to the congregation. They are coming in and they will follow you from day one because, like we stated earlier, they chose that church in large part because they chose you. So the relational quadrant, it's incredibly accurate, incredibly helpful because it sets your expectations low enough that you don't go in stupid. You realize that you have to earn the right to lead. Even though there's going to be some positional hierarchy, you've got to earn their respect, and it will take time. Relational quadrant.